we're exploring the world around us. Not only the world around us that we have created through our mental representation, our mental imaging, that mental imaging, that world that we live in, that we have consented to, and I call it the consensual reality, is very distorted in many ways because the mind is really projecting out its version of reality. And so we see really what the reflection back from our mind tells us. I remember as a young boy, maybe 4 or 5, we went to the carnival, and I have 2 older brothers, and we went through this house of mirrors. And I was at the age where it was horrifying, because I would go into this house and all I would see would be my reflection. It were all mirrors. So all I would see is my reflection, and I couldn't find them myself through the maze to get out. While my brothers, being older, they just scurried towards the exit. And I would keep knocking my head. I just remember having a lot of bruises on my forehead as I smashed into the mirrors. But the horrifying thing was that I couldn't get out of my image. Eventually, just to end the story, a carnival personnel came and took me out because I was crying in the middle of them. But that's not too distant from the world that we have created here. It's very hard to get a sense of it because we have lived within it for so long. We just take that to be reality. We take the forms and the identification and the memories and the busyness and the thought, the conceptual version of reality as the truth. It's just what we live with. And yes, there's inconveniences within that, but we can conveniently dismiss those inconveniences by simply blaming those inconveniences onto circumstances or other people. And so we somehow most people live their entire 70 or 80 years on the earth within the trance of that imagery. But there's a flaw within that. Well, there are many flaws. The way the mind has distorted the perceptions so that we can live within it with some degree of security is that it projects out the meaning that it gives things onto the things itself. So we think the things themselves hold the meaning that the mind gives those things. A chair is a chair as an entity. It's not that the mind thinks of it as a chair and then it becomes a chair. It's a chair in and of itself. And in the same way, we think of ourselves as separate from, as holding a separate identity to the rest of the world. And that, of course, creates space between each other. It creates distance between each other. And it creates time, because we have to believe in time in order to believe in our image. The image represents what we have been in the past. And we have a memory bank that tells us what we have been in the past. So we can look backward into the past and see what we have been. And since we were something in the past, we must be something now. And so that logic moves forward from the past into the present and through the present into the future. Another inconvenience of this particular trance is that the present doesn't represent much to us. The presence itself is kind of an inconvenience, in the sense that if you don't have anything to do within the present, there's like restlessness. I should be doing something. I need to be productive. That productivity is a sense that accomplishment or purpose or meaning or the enhancement of my image comes not in being present in the present. It comes in how fulfilled I am in the future by doing the productive things I need to do. So I work through the present. The present is just the state it's the creative state in which I'm moving through so that I can get to a place where I can be enhanced or accomplished or fulfilled or completed in the future. And so the future really represents to me the sense of fulfillment. And so since the future never fully arrives, and when it arrives it's the present, and the present isn't particularly comfortable, that we're always a little bit off balance in the present because we're leaning into what has yet to be fulfilled. And so this sense of leaning is the flaw of the distortion. This way that we have perceived or conceived reality to be has a flaw, an inherent flaw in it. Anytime you make something reality, what it is not, are images of reality, then you're going to have a flaw that you have to work yourself out of. It's not going to be all in line and purposeful. And that flaw is an inherent sense of incompletion in the present that is kind of gnaws at us at some point. It's somehow we can never relax completely into the present. And because if we do relax into the present, we have to give up the sense of moving ourselves into the future. And so when we actually relax in the present, we feel pretty worthless. We feel sort of disabled, because the mechanism of what makes us work, which was thought about the future, is disabled in the present if we just live within the present without the thought of the future. And so we get bored, we get restless, we don't feel particularly compatible with ourselves. We feel a gnawing sense of ill at ease, and that stirs us to start thinking in terms of what we need to do to get over these feelings in the future once more. And so the present isn't really a settled presence, it's an annoyed presence, right? Well, at some point it dawns on us very slowly, if it dawns on us at all, because there's a lot that this reality gives us that we're reluctant to give up. It gives us glory. It gives us self-glory. Because if we're accomplished in comparison to our neighbor, hey, we're an A student. And it gives us a sense of self-containment. That is, it's all up to me, and the world is something to be accomplished through my own will and through my own volition. And we like the sense of having our own sort of fortification within this world. So that's what it gives us. But then the limitation of what it doesn't give us starts gnawing and at us, so that it's not what it gives us isn't worth what it doesn't give us, if that makes any sense to you. And the flaw begins to become obvious, and when we start looking at the flaw, we start feeling this sense of discontentedness in the present, and we realize that the whole way the mind configures itself, that has created this semblance, conceptual semblance of reality, can't ever settle with itself. It can't ever be content. And something's very disturbed there when we can't fully be content. And we start realizing that as long as the mind is the driving force, we're never going to be content. It configures reality in a way that leads to discontentment. And so then we start asking questions about reality. Ever since we began, we've been asking questions from reality. We've assumed reality was true, and we'll say, well, how can I be content within this? What do I have to do to be content? Where do I need to go to be content? How much more do I have to be content? Those are questions from the truth of the reality that we assume. But now we're asking questions about the reality that we have assumed to be true. And that starts a whole different process, right? Well, you say, okay, what is this? What is this sense, this gnawing flaw? And that's where the Buddha begins. He begins with the sense of flaw, the struggle of life. This is what's going on here. What is happening here? That this flaw, why is it inherent in how I depict reality? What's going on? And as we look more and more at the depths of the assumptions on which this reality is based, we see that it's all flawed. It's all flawed. And let me just give you a few, this is a very rough sketch, but the sense of time is flawed. The sense of time, of past and future, is flawed. And as we ask questions that uproot that sense of time, we come to present. The present holds all time. And as we uproot the sense of I, or me, independent from reality, we come to connectedness of reality. The oneness of reality. And as we look at the sense of distance from one another, the sense of we come to union with one another. The heart opens, the heart's response of love, rather than competition and evaluation and judgment, which is in the old paradigm. The new paradigm comes in line with the heart's values of compassion, love, that sort of thing. So that's the movement. That's the shift that's occurred. That's what I've been talking about now. And we'll continue to talk about.